We didn't grow up knowing what executive function skills were. Life felt overwhelming. Managing time, staying organized, and feeling stuck made everything difficult. What we didn't realize was that we lacked the skills to plan, prioritize, and break goals into manageable steps. After years of trial and error, we've seen how powerful executive function skills can be. With expert interviews, real stories, and practical strategies, this podcast is the resource we wish we had. Whether you're a student, parent, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential. Welcome to the Executive Function for All podcast. Today, we welcome back Nick Thompson. Nick is someone who I've looked up to and admired for a long time. He's a licensed clinical social worker in Boulder, Colorado. When Nick talks about anxiety, young people listen. He has a gift for making students feel understood and not judged, and that's where the real progress occurs. In this episode, we dig into the misconceptions around anxiety, how executive function challenges make it worse, and the techniques that Nick uses to actually help students move through it. I love Nick's passion, and I think you will as well. Let's begin. Nick, thank you so much for being here as always. You have been one of my best friends in this mental health world, and I think I always come back to your work and to your podcast and to things you've told me because you talk about anxiety in a way that I've never heard before, and I've always admired that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Let's start off with, whether it's in your practice, in your personal life, in your professional life, what are some misconceptions you hear about anxiety?
Yeah, and when talking about anxiety, let's straight away talk about something that can be used. I'm nervous right now as I sit here. And 1 to 10, let's go. The anxiety scale, pretty high. 8, 8.5. Where are you at right now, Brandon?
You know what? I shouldn't be that high because this is like our home studio. This is the home court. But every time we turn on the lights in the camera, it jumps to a 7. Especially because I told you this before, but I had a panic attack on stage giving a speech like 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago now.
Yeah.
And ever since then, my anxiety goes from like 1 to like 7 or 8 the second I know someone's watching me speak publicly.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the panic attack thing. Another thing about anxiety, it makes it hard to access those executive functions that you talk so much about. So as I'm sitting here right now, I'm forgetting the question that you asked. I think it was about misconceptions about anxiety. One of the cool things about talking about anxiety when you're anxious is because you can just be open and honest about what's going on, because you get yourself into trouble with anxiety when you try to act like you're not anxious. And that's what we just did. We had a conversation before we turned on these cameras, and the rhythm of it is a little bit different, and then the lights go on and things get like professional, right? You know, like
I don't even think I ever even sit like this usually.
No, we're finger tenting for some reason.
Yeah.
When's the last time we were finger tenting together?
I've ever talked to you
Zero
like this.
finger tents.
Yeah.
So our brains are picking up on like something's different. Your tone is different. We got finger tense. There's cameras in this room. So like the amygdala and the midbrain and all these threat detection, threat activation centers are kind of going, something's different. So one of the first things about anxiety is you don't have to act like you're not nervous. Be nervous. Do it scared has become a mantra, and oftentimes mantras aren't the best, but that one's a good one. Do it scared. The expectation to do difficult things like calm and confident is an unrealistic expectation. So when you're anxious and you try to resist it in the form of acting like you're not feeling it, it builds and it builds and it builds and it gets worse. We spin out, we discombobulate, and people can pick up on it. Anybody who's judging someone for being nervous during a speech, during a performance, during a social interaction, they're doing that because they're insecure. Right? Anybody who knows it, and our heart goes out to someone. You become more relatable when you own up to the fact that you're nervous. It's endearing also. It shows that you care. Think about the ingredients that need to come together in order for sort of this type of nerves to occur. And it's something that relates to the students that you work with and just people in general. So, okay, this type of performance anxiety, let's call it, there has to be 3 things present. The outcome has to be uncertain, like how this interview goes is uncertain. It has to be challenging. This is challenging. Interviews are challenging. Taking a test is challenging. A football game, a basketball game, going and asking somebody out on a date, all that's challenging. Again, outcome uncertain. And third, you have to have some influence on how the outcome arrives. on whether it's successful or not. Does that make sense? Did that third one make sense? Mm-hmm. That in order for me to feel this sort of performance anxiety, I have to care about how the outcome goes. It has to be challenging, and I have to have influence on the outcome. So the anxiety that I'm feeling currently, I have all three. But in thinking about the families that you work with and students, is whether it is a recital, whether it is a basketball, football, lacrosse game, whether it is a speech, whether it is a job interview, whether it's going up to that person that you're attracted to and asking them out on a date. Those three things will be present. You will care deeply about the outcome. It will be a challenging endeavor, and you'll have an influence on how it goes. Now, let's look big picture. What kind of life would it be if you aren't having circumstances, situations in your life where those three ingredients come together on a somewhat consistent basis? Your life sucks if you don't at least have some frequency of those three things coming together in your life. Now, this sets up with like growth mindset and all these different things, but really, what's the alternative? If like caring, so stop caring? That's super cool. Remember that in middle school when the cool guy didn't care about anything? Yeah. I hope that has gone away and that hasn't leaked into high schools of check him out. He doesn't care about anything. I think that's a Big Lebowski thing. He's a nihilist. He doesn't believe in anything. And the dude says, oh, that sounds exhausting. But it's not real. So I kind of look at it through that lens of, what shows up in sports is like pressure is a privilege, kind of that idea that's relating, that's lining up with this. But talking to young people about that, like, man, you don't ever want a life where that type of caring/anxiety will show up.
Yeah, and so two misconceptions I want to repeat. The first one being fighting it. I think that's our instinct, is to fight it, right? Instead of leaning into it, calling it out, feeling your feelings, as I've heard you say before. That's misconception one. And then misconception two is just the basic understanding that it's almost a privilege to have this anxiety in some ways when we can learn how to manage it.
So in talking about misconceptions, first one, to go off what you're saying, everybody has it. Everybody has anxiety. It's an emotion. Kind of wish that they would have named disorders differently, because the anxiety and emotion that everybody has, people can make the jump so quickly because they experience an emotion to go, oh, do I have a disorder? Because it's called generalized anxiety disorder or social anxiety disorder. So that's a misconception that I think a lot of people are pushing through, but it's worth saying that just because you have anxiety doesn't mean you have a disorder or a problem or an issue. If you did not have anxiety, that would be highly concerning.
That is such an important point. That's a huge misconception with a lot of the students that we see. It's like, I'm anxious a couple days per week. Like, what's wrong? And
right.
And it's like, we're okay. It's okay to be anxious before the test. It's okay to be anxious before talking to your professor. That doesn't mean we don't do it. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And that reframe that we're talking about of, it can be not only is it not a problem, it's a good thing. It means that you care. The outcome is uncertain, you care, and that you have an influence on it. It's challenging. That's a good thing. So that misconception of just because you have anxiety doesn't mean that you have an anxiety disorder. The other thing I want to talk about with the misconceptions around anxiety is something I'm noticing with young people and people just in general is often when they're talking about anxiety, they're not talking about anxiety. What I mean by that is I had a college student in my office this week and they were saying, I'm feeling really anxious. And I asked, well, how do you know you're anxious? And they looked at me befuddled. I go, how do you know you're anxious? And they said, you ask weird questions. I said, I know, but how do you know you're anxious? And they said, well, I'm thinking about the test that I have to take on Thursday. I said, well, those are your thoughts. Anxiety, for the most part, lives in your body. There can be a cognitive piece of it, but it's mainly this release of chemicals in the body that get us ready to move, emotion, to evoke motion. On a basic level, emotion tells us to do one of three things: avoid, approach, or attack. Anxiety and other flavors of fear like it are avoidance emotions. So the message that the chemical stir-up delivers is avoid. For people to realize whether they're talking about thoughts or an emotion is an important thing to do. Because here's the thing. I'm thinking about the test I have to take on Thursday. That is a worry. Worry is thoughts. Anxiety is emotion. Do they have an impact on one another? Of course. But you do very different things with worry than you do with anxiety.
Tell me more.
It's an important distinction, and I hope it doesn't come off as me trying to too much like psychological babble. But it's truly important because you do distinctly different things with emotion than you do with your thoughts. Worry, again, thought. Emotion, more body-based. You can challenge thoughts. That can be a great thing to do, is to challenge thoughts. It is not a good thing to do with emotions. We do not want to challenge our emotions. So that's briefly, that is one of the most important distinctions there, is I'm worried about the test that I have to take on Thursday. You can interact with thoughts in a different way than you interact with emotions. There's many different techniques, and we can get a bit into how to interact with worry. But what do you do with emotions? We talked about this before. I think you touched on it earlier. We got lucky with them. The instructions are in the name. They are called feelings because we're supposed to feel them. If we're just supposed to think about them, they'd be called thinkings. They're called feelings. And so we're supposed to sit with emotions. Like, what do I do with these emotions? I don't want to feel them, the uncomfortable ones. So we try to get rid of them. But again, what we resist persists. You experience it. You having the vulnerability to talk about your panic attack. The reason that you had your panic attack, in my strong opinion, was because you were trying not to feel something.
100%. I was nervous and I shoved it down for years.
Yes.
For years, and put on the show like you and I put on stage.
Yep.
And eventually the nervous system was like, no, we're not going to do that anymore.
I like thinking about like emotions knock at the door. You want to let them in. Sit with them. What do you got? Got any wisdom for me, or are you just kind of here to mess with me? And if you don't interact with them in certain ways, feed them through your thoughts and these other things, they'll get up and go in a short period of time. Before getting to that, back to the worry versus anxiety piece, my worry with young people is, and people in general, that we're so disconnected from our bodies that we're not even aware of the emotions that are going on inside of them. We are so intertwined, fused with our thoughts, that we're unaware of the emotions. That when you ask somebody, for the most part, how do they know if they're angry? How do they know if they're sad? How do they know if they're anxious? What they'll share with you is thoughts. But what do we know about emotions? No, they exist in our bodies. They exist in our torso, our arms. And in order to feel these feelings, we have to be aware of the sensations that are occurring in our body. So one of the first steps is to notice the difference between a worry, again, cognition, versus an emotion that exists in your body. Because this whole idea, we've been told it for a long time, feel your feelings. And I remember hearing that when I was young. I had a mom who was a good mom, and she was in the medical field, and she would tell me to feel my feelings. And I remember sitting there, and then I, of course, moved to Boulder from Fargo, North Dakota, and heard a lot about feeling your feelings. And I remember sitting there and going, I don't know what that means. Right? It sounds nice. What do you mean sit with your feelings? I like sit, what are we talking about? So I got into understanding what feel your feelings actually means. Feeling your feelings is, do we have time for this, to jump into this?
Yeah.
So it's about what we give our attention to. This is called perception. There are senses. We know a lot about how the body senses things. But then when we talk about attention, we're talking about where we bring our attention to. That's called perception. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And we have control over that. So there's interoception, which is bringing your attention to, your focus, to the sensations at the skin and within. Interoception. That is how you feel your feelings. There's exteroception, which is bringing your attention through the 5 apertures into the world, our senses, to pay attention to the world around us with our senses. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm a college student and I have test anxiety.
Right.
I'm sure you and I hear this 4, 5, 6 times a week, right? I have test anxiety. Before I walk into that midterm final exam, what do I do to feel my feelings?
Feel your feelings on the walk in?
Or just at any period right before I take the exam.
Yeah, so we get into a conversation about, does that person feel dysregulated? Or is it a student who sits down in a desk that's dysregulated before a test? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or yes, please.
Okay. So, and you're going to have to guide me on this. I'm going to jump back to the interoception thing because I think it connects to this. But the interoception thing is, again, bring your senses, your attention to the sensations at the skin and within. We'll act it out right now. Clap your hands together hard 3 times. Can you feel any tingling?
Yeah, you feel the vibrations basically everywhere on the hands.
Okay, bring all of your attention to the tingling in your thumbs. Can you do that? Now, can you bounce your attention now out to your pinky? Mm-hmm. Still got some tingle? A little warmth?
Yep.
Can you go and bring your attention to the very tip of your right pinky. Feel anything there? Still got it? Okay. That's interoception. That is feeling your feelings. When somebody says, just feel your feelings, that is what we're talking about. Anxiety, for most people, will create maybe something in the stomach area. Butterflies. Feel the butterflies. Your heart rate goes up. Feel your heart rate go up. Are your hands a little bit tingly? Are the legs a little bit numb? Bring your attention to that. That is what it means when it says feel your feelings.
So just getting back into your body.
Getting back into your body without judgment. You're not trying to get rid of these things. You bring curiosity to it. Curiosity is, I hate the word cure, but the alliteration of it sounds nice. Curiosity is so much of a cure of these issues that we have. Just being openly curious about these sensations in the body. Man, do they lose their grip, their power when you're curious about them.
Yeah, you've told me something before. Something about how when you actually feel your feelings, when you actually get there with them and focus on them deeply, kind of like you just had me do.
Right. Bringing your attention to the sensations.
It's only there for a couple minutes, short amount of time.
Yeah, that thing of where the neuroscientists came out and said, we know the lifespan of an emotion, and it's 90 seconds. And people went, well, that doesn't make sense. I've been angry for years. The lifespan of an emotion, the chemical release until it sort of runs its course through the body is 90 seconds, the most intense emotion. So what does this mean for people who are like, that doesn't make sense because, again, I feel emotions for longer. If you feel an emotion for longer than 90 seconds, it is not because of the initial trigger that caused the emotion or because of that initial emotion. It is because of your thoughts. You are keeping the emotion going, evolving, amplifying with your thoughts. And this was a game changer. And for me, a great point of peace and a reminder for me that, man, if I don't want to feel something that I'm feeling currently, if I just sit with it with curiosity, don't feed it with my thoughts, it's going to be gone in 90 seconds. Isn't that wonderful?
It's wonderful. It's challenging and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I'm going to keep with the same college student example.
Yeah, bring me back.
Yeah. I think that's probably the hardest part for you and I is, okay, we have test anxiety. Getting you to sit there because it's not comfortable to sit with this emotion, right? Get there to really feel it.
Right.
And then to take the story out of it.
Right. The story is the thoughts.
The stories and then fighting the anxiety, like you said.
Yeah.
That's, I think I hear the word should all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I shouldn't feel, a variation of should. I shouldn't feel this way, or I should be able to do this. And it keeps the story going.
Good. Shoulds are important and in that they're terrible. They're never helpful. If you're a teacher who tells students what they should or should not be feeling, that's poor teaching. You're a father. If you tell your daughter, I know you well enough to say this, and anybody watching this will be like, man, he's a jerk. If you tell your daughter how she should or should not feel, that's shouldy parenting. See, isn't that fun with play on words? It's shouldy thinking to tell ourselves that we should or should not feel certain ways. You are just feeling an emotion. Why do we get into the shoulds? I love this visual with the emotion of looking at emotions like weather patterns. Imagine driving in your neighborhood and your neighbor it's raining outside, right? And he's in his front yard and he's just livid. He's staring up at the sky, pissed off, and he's screaming. And you roll down your window and you're like, Stan, what's going on? What's the problem? And he's like, it shouldn't be raining. It said it wouldn't be raining. I looked at the app today. It shouldn't be raining. You'd be like, all right, have a good one, Stan. That's so much of how we interact with our emotions. It's raining. Okay, what am I going to do now? Does that make sense? We get ourselves into so much trouble with the expectations of how we should or should not feel. And because of these expectations of the should or should not, when the emotions arrive, we jam ourselves up by trying to resist the ones that we shouldn't have, or by trying to produce or hold on to the ones that we should have. So getting back to what you were talking about, very adamant today, getting loud, it's fun. that idea of the student. Okay, so let's really get into it. I would want to hear what the student is experiencing in their body before. Do you want to give me an example of what they're feeling in their body, or should I just kind of go general if they're feeling highly anxious?
Let's go general.
Okay. If they're highly anxious, right, your relationship with the breath. The quickest way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest part of our nervous system. There's a sympathetic, which is the fight, flight, or freeze, which many people are familiar with. That's where anxiety, that's where fear lives. And there's the parasympathetic, which is the chill out, rest and digest. Okay. So the exercises that somebody wants to do with performance anxiety, with test anxiety, is try to activate their parasympathetic nervous system. Is this making sense?
Absolutely.
And when
yeah.
I say is this making sense, like if that comes off judgmental, I apologize. I just really don't know if I'm making sense. Okay, so you notice that you are in your fight, flight, or freeze. With that student, where does anxiety show up? I would want them to get curious before the test, leading up to the test, just in general. What are the physiological, the body experiences of their form of anxiety? So for you, where does anxiety show up in your body?
Heart.
Heart. What about the heart?
It feels burning. It feels fast.
Okay, so heart rate goes up. Go further with burning.
Yeah, it's warm, tingling.
Is it tight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a tightness there for sure.
Do you get anything in your gut? Are you more
I don't.
uptight?
I'm more gut and then palms, sweaty palms.
Okay. Anything in the throat?
Yes. Yeah. You could feel a tightness in there as well.
Okay.
Mouth gets super dry.
Dry mouth. Okay. So with this student, what I would want to do is find out what their symptoms of anxiety is. Let's use yours. You're this student. One of the first things to do, this is the educational piece, is to educate the person on why they have these body sensations. There's a good reason for this. This is one of the best interventions that you can do with your child, to explain why the sensations are there, to demystify the anxiety. Because remember, anxiety isn't the issue. It is your relationship with your anxiety that is the issue. Anxiety is just the sensation showing up in the body that we talked about can only last 90 seconds. We get ourselves into trouble when the sensations show up and then we go, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Once we go, oh, now there's anxiety about the anxiety. That's the issue. And then maybe that young person who goes, uh-oh, about the sensations that you described, goes home to a parent and says, I think I have anxiety. And what might be a parental response to that?
We got to get you checked out or something. And now we have
a big uh-oh.
Yeah, now we got anxiety about the anxiety, and now we're off in the cycle, right?
And you missed one floor. We've got anxiety about the anxiety about the anxiety.
Yeah.
That's, as Alan Watts would say, a vicious cycle. So how to interrupt this cycle with the first uh-oh for the student is to explain why they have these things showing up in their body. Your heart rate goes up when you get anxious because your amygdala and emotional centers in your brain are misreading the situation as being a matter of life and death, that you are physically in danger. That is what anxiety does. It mistakes discomfort for danger. I'll repeat that because
I was just going to say, can you please repeat that?
That one's important. Anxiety and the systems that do this threat detection, threat activation thing, it is mistaking discomfort for danger. So the test, that situation, is discomfort. You're not physically in danger, but this part of your brain in the middle believes you're physically in danger. So it's going to respond as if you're physically in danger. So it speeds up your heart to pump blood and oxygen into your arms or legs to get you ready to what? Run. Fight, flight, or freeze, right? So you might have a flight response. You ever see that leg going with some of the students that you work with? Bouncing?
That's usually mine, right?
Yep. I look at that as like kind of the starter signal of anxiety sometime going, let's get out of here. Let's run. So you're having a flight response. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If it believes the test, that situation could harm you, flight would keep you safe. You get dry mouth because anxiety, fear, shuts down or slows digestion. It says we don't need to be digesting food right now, we're about to die. And the salivary glands are part of the digestive system. So that's why you get dry mouth.
Interesting.
And I'm noticing right now I have a dry mouth because I'm nervous. Because this amygdala in the middle of my brain is mistaking this situation in this room with these cameras and sitting with you as being physically dangerous, even though it isn't.
Yeah.
So butterflies, again, that's this system going, we don't need to be digesting food.
That's what butterflies are.
Yes, the pit in your stomach. All of these things can be explained. Does that make sense? If it was a saber-toothed tiger, you don't need to be digesting food. So anxiety wants to take those precious resources and move them out into the limbs and to the areas that are necessary for this fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, the demystifying the education of it really does take the bite out of it for a lot of people, I'm thinking, right? It's not like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. I think I'm having a heart attack. It's like, I'm anxious and this is why it's happening.
And just interesting, if you get super sweaty like I do when you get nervous, it's the body cooling the system down because it thinks you're about to fight or to go for a long run. When you exercise, you sweat, right? That was a game changer for me when I realized that I was sweating when I get nervous because the system is actually working. Again, it's making a mistake, mistaking this discomfort for danger.
Yeah.
But that's the first step that I would do with the student, is for them to realize that there's nothing wrong with these systems, that it's producing these sensations. Okay, so you don't get the O. Then you're more likely to drop down and notice those sensations, not be afraid of them, not resist them, being curious about them. Other thing, a grounding breath. What is your go-to grounding breath? Do you have one, Brandon? What's your go-to?
I either do box, or the one that I learned from you is like when a child is crying really hard and they do the double breath.
Yeah, the double inhale, the physiological sigh.
That one really works well for me.
Yeah.
A
lot of people like that. The physiological sigh, Huberman's big on that. That's a double inhale with an extended exhale.
Yeah. Also, Wim Hof does some stuff like that.
Wim Hof does kind of sort of some intentional hyperventilation stuff. I love it, but live it up. Do that before a test, but some people will give you looks if you do Wim Hof cycle. You'll be making a trip to the mental health professional real quick. But I love Wim Hof breathing. But the physiological side is a great one. It's been shown to be the best breath to use to offload the most amount of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream. So the buildup of the carbon dioxide in our bloodstream is one of the main reasons that we feel that anxiety is that stress. So that expels the most amount of it. And like you said, it's really cool. You can see dogs do it. You can see, kids when they're sobbing do it. It's this naturally built-in thing. That is their nervous system wanting to activate the parasympathetic to calm us down. So introducing the student to different breaths. There's a 4-7-8, which is a great one. That's like the Dr. Wheels go-to. That's in for 4, hold for 7, exhale forcibly out of the mouth for a count of 8. Anytime you emphasize or elongate the exhale, you will calm down. In general, any breath where you emphasize or elongate the exhale, you will calm down.
So are those your two core recommendations to students if you feel anxious?
Yes.
Feel your feelings, get in deep with those, and just be curious.
And I don't even like the language, so sorry for the correction, is
Please.
Bring your attention to the sensations in your body, which is feel your feelings.
So your two core recommendations would be pay close attention to the sensations in your body, and then breathe.
And sometimes when I get super anxious, breathing techniques don't work because I try to do them and I realize I can't breathe. And so it makes things get worse. And then it would be like grounding techniques, like feel your feet on the ground, like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 stuff of bring your sight, look at 5 things, listen to 4 things. People can look these things up. So noticing what is sort of your anchoring activity. Is it a breath, or is it more about bringing your attention to something in the room, feeling your feet and your seat on the ground? Oftentimes that can be more ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When I'm really nervous, focusing on my breath will spin me out.
It's a great reminder because I every time I'm in a stressful situation, I'm like, feel your feet, feel your toes, wiggle your toes. Like that works better for me than the breathing.
Low and slow. Focusing on something that is lower can really activate that parasympathetic. There's all these cool things and like little hacks. There's mammalian dive reflex for that student before they go into the classroom, go into the bathroom, hold their breath, turn the water on as cold as they can, and splash cold water while they're holding their breath around their nostrils and their face. This activates something called the mammalian dive reflex, which is this leftover thing that we have from our ancestors, in which if you can get really cold water around the nostril area, it hits this thing called the trigeminal nerve, I believe, and it activates the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in our body, and it turns on our parasympathetic nervous system. Again, that's the calming thing because it thinks we're drowning. We have this leftover thing, which sounds like it's a bad idea. Why would you want it? But you will chill out. Maybe not so much around here, but where I'm from, like once a year, a kid would fall through the ice, little Billy, and you hear the story about little Billy falling through it wasn't always a Billy, that would be weird. But he was down there for like 30 minutes and lived in that freezing cold water. And it was always like, how could that happen? It's the mammalian dive reflex, which this system, when it believes you're drowning, takes all these resources and puts them around the vital organs and plummets your heart rate and plummets your blood pressure.
That's fascinating.
So you can activate this in the bathroom before a test.
Interesting.
Or in the shower before, an online presentation, whatever it may be. There's the Valsalva maneuver, where you plug your nose. What that does is creates pressure in the chest and abdominal cavity and presses up against the vagus nerve. Anytime the vagus nerve gets activated, you chill out. With that one, don't press too hard. Don't want anybody developing hemorrhoids or passing out.
Yeah. Thank you for breaking down why anxiety presents in the body. I think I've learned so much of that from you, and I think that's so important. What is the relationship between anxiety and executive function?
Well, executive functions are difficult as is, but if you're anxious, they're harder to access. Depending on your list, executive functions, organizing, prioritizing, focus, sustaining effort, shifting focus, working memory, regulating your mood, and regulating your behavior. Okay. So the executive functions are mainly up here in that prefrontal cortex, right? That's when that's calling the shots. And when anxiety jumps in and gets cranked up, it shuts down sort of the communication with where the executive functioning is occurring. It's called the amygdala hijack.
Yeah.
So you're not able to access those regions of the brain that are essential for doing well in school, doing well in work, and in your relationships. The things that make us human are those executive functions. So anxiety's impact on executive functions is it's incredibly difficult to access those functions that you need to find your planner, to take the test, to recall the definition of the vocabulary word when you're in a state of high anxiety.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's a big correlation between ADHD and anxiety.
Sure.
I mean, I've heard it's up to 60 to 80%. Is that true from what you know?
You're saying remember, because we want to remind people, everybody's got anxiety. So you're saying with disorders.
Clinically high levels of anxiety.
Yeah.
And ADHD, I've heard the correlation is very high.
Yeah, I think there's several things going on there. I think people with ADHD in general are a little bit more intense and creative. Let's think about creativity for a bit. Isn't anxiety sort of oftentimes a result of creativity gone wrong?
Tell me more.
Meaning,
yeah,
the person if you got a highly creative student or kid, they can sit down and imagine cool, interesting, beautiful, nuanced stories that they write down and turn in for their English class. Okay, so they have that thing in their brain that they can do. Not everybody can do, but that same ability can sit there late at night when it's time to go to bed and create some hellacious hypotheticals.
Some crazy stories
some catastrophic conclusions.
Yeah.
In imagining these terrible things that could happen in the future that feel real. In the same way when they wrote them down in this class and it was contained, it felt so real that they got an A on that creative writing story. That part of the brain still can flare up at night.
That's a great way to put it. I don't think I've thought about it in that sense of how we can spin up anxiety by these stories, but that's also our gift. The gift is the challenge, right?
Right. I don't know, and this is, anecdotal, and the plural of anecdote isn't data, but I don't know one highly creative person who doesn't go to battle with anxiety on a consistent basis, and even often paranoia, because that's the other side of that creativity. A mind that can create these things, these possibilities, these hypotheticals, that can time travel in that way, that can result in a lot of travel to the future, which produces uncertainty, and uncertainty equals anxiety.
Yeah. Nick, you are the man. I love talking to you. I love your passion for the field. Where can people learn more about you or anything else that you'd like to talk about?
I've got a website with a glamour shot of me from 10 years ago with sweet hair, Nicholas D. Thompson, D as in David. I give presentations on occasion. Got a private practice in Boulder, and I work with, mainly 16 to 30-year-old folks on a lot of different topics. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm up to.
Awesome. Nick, thank you for being here, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Executive Function for All podcast. If today's episode brought you any value, please rate us 5 stars and share it with someone who may benefit. And remember, every small step you take builds towards your success. For resources and guidance, visit untappedlearning.com. Keep growing, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.